The dinner rush had barely begun, yet tension already hung heavy in the air. The clink of cutlery and soft murmur of conversation couldn't drown out the whispers darting between the staff. In the far corner, at his usual table, sat Mr. Raymond Cole, a man whose wealth was matched only by his reputation for cruelty. His designer suit was immaculate, his silver cufflinks catching the light, but his scowl was sharper than any knife in the kitchen. No waitress had lasted more than a shift with him. Some had walked out mid-order, others had left in tears. The staff had learned to avoid his table like a fire they couldn't control. Tonight, however, there was no avoiding it. Maya stepped into the dining room for her first shift, tying her apron with deliberate care. The swell of her pregnancy was visible beneath the crisp white shirt, but she moved with quiet grace. Her smile wasn't forced, it was warm, as if she carried her own light into the room. Yet her eyes held something more. A steady resilience, the kind that comes from weathering storms no one else can see. The moment she was told she'd be serving Raymond, a few waitresses exchanged sympathetic glances. They expected the same story, impatience, insults, and a quick exit. But Maya didn't hesitate. She picked up her notepad, straightened her posture, and walked toward the corner table, unshaken by the man's icy stare. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if this, too, would end like all the others. Maya walked toward the corner table with the steady rhythm of someone who had learned not to flinch under pressure. Raymond didn't even glance up as she approached. His voice was sharp and impatient, each word clipped like the crack of a whip. "The menu is all wrong," he grumbled, flipping through the pages as if every dish offended him. "The water is lukewarm. And you're walking too slowly. Do you plan to take all night?" Around them, the air seemed to tighten. A busboy passing by winced. Two waitresses near the bar exchanged knowing looks, silently counting down the seconds before Maya broke. But she didn't. She simply held her pen to her notepad, her expression calm, almost serene, as if she were listening to a friend's trivial complaint rather than an insult meant to sting. When he paused, she nodded once, her tone steady. "I'll take care of it, sir." No hint of sarcasm, no edge in her voice, just quiet assurance. Raymond's eyes flicked up at her, momentarily caught off guard. He had expected pushback, or at least the trembling discomfort he was so used to provoking. Instead, there was that gentle smile again, as if his barbs couldn't pierce her. For the first time that evening, his fingers stilled against the table. He said nothing, only studied her as she turned to walk toward the kitchen. Behind her, the staff exchanged glances, confused, curious. This wasn't going the way anyone expected. The days blurred into a quiet routine. Every evening, Raymond occupied the same corner table, and every evening, Maya approached him with that same calm smile. His complaints still came: too much ice in his drink, not enough salt on his food, the bread served too late, but she met each one with patient acknowledgement, never letting his words rattle her. The staff began watching from a distance, half in disbelief, waiting for the moment her patience would crack. It never did. One gray afternoon, the rain tapped steadily against the restaurant windows, casting everything in a muted light. Raymond sat alone, his suit jacket draped over the back of the chair. Maya arrived with his coffee, setting it down gently. As he reached for it, she noticed a faint tremor in his hands. She said nothing, but quietly folded a napkin and slid it beneath the cup, steadying it so not a drop would spill. Raymond froze for a moment, then looked up at her. This time, his eyes actually met hers, sharp blue, but less cold than before. "Why are you still here?" he asked, his voice quieter, almost curious. "Everyone else quits." Maya's smile was small but genuine. "Because I know what it's like to feel alone at a table." He didn't reply, only leaned back slightly, studying her as though he was seeing her for the first time. Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside, something almost imperceptible had shifted between them. A few days later, the dinner rush had thinned, leaving the restaurant in a softer hum of clinking glasses and low conversation. Raymond sat in his usual spot, reading the paper, when he caught the sound of Maya's voice from the service station just a few feet away. She wasn't speaking to him, her words were meant for another waitress, but they carried in the quiet. She spoke of her husband, a soldier who had left for deployment 2 years ago and never returned. There was no bitterness in her voice, only a quiet acceptance that came from living with a wound too deep for most to see. She explained how she'd been working double shifts, saving every dollar for her baby's future, determined to stand on her own without taking charity. The other waitress murmured something sympathetic, but Maya just smiled faintly and went back to work. Raymond's eyes stayed fixed on the paper, but he wasn't reading. Her story lingered in the air between them, peeling back something he had long kept closed. That night, when Maya approached his table with the check, he didn't criticize the food, the service, or the temperature of his coffee. Instead, he looked at her and asked quietly, "When's the baby due?" She blinked in surprise, then answered softly, "In 2 months." He nodded once, slid a thick tip into the billfold, and handed it back without a word. Maya opened it later and froze. The amount was far beyond anything she'd ever been given. The golden light of late afternoon spilled through the restaurant windows on Maya's final shift before maternity leave. The air felt different. Softer, almost expectant, as she moved between tables with the familiar grace that had carried her through countless long days. When she reached Raymond's corner, his usual coffee sat cooling, untouched. He was gone. Puzzled, she noticed an envelope tucked neatly beneath the cup. Wiping her hands on her apron, she opened it. Inside was a check, an amount so large it made her breath hitch, enough to cover her baby's needs for years. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the small note that came with it. The handwriting was neat but deliberate. "You served me more than food. You served me kindness I thought I'd never deserve. Thank you." Her eyes blurred with tears, the words swimming on the page. She pressed the letter to her chest, overcome by a warmth that spread deeper than gratitude. It wasn't just the money, it was knowing that her patience and compassion had reached a heart she thought was unreachable. Outside, through the restaurant's wide glass window, a sleek black car idled at the curb. Raymond sat behind the wheel, watching quietly. For a moment, their eyes met. He gave the faintest of smiles, small, but genuine, before pulling away into the city streets, leaving behind not just a generous gift, but a changed version of himself. Maya stood there, holding the envelope, feeling the weight of what kindness can do when it's given without expectation.